All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here. I'm Jamie. I'm hosting today's webinar on behalf of PAC, and we're here with Alyson from Gingr, who is going to present data-driven decision making for pet care professionals. So if you're a pet parent that's on today, that's all right. You're still going to learn some things, and we welcome you. Thank you for being here. For those that are going to listen to this later, thank you for coming on and watching it later. So I have a little introduction first before we get started with our presentation. And so I'm just going to share my screen here. There's still so many people hopping into this. So I'm doing two things at once here. All right, let me share this. All right, so welcome everyone. We may have some people here that don't know who we are or who PAC is. So I just wanted to do a quick little introduction of who we are. This happens every time for when we go live. Why can't I switch to the next one? There we go. All right, so what is PAC? So PAC is a non-profit third-party certification council providing independent testing to the pet services industry. So this certification requires a renewal for every 3 years, third party, and kind of some of the differences of what makes us different than, say, an education course. So often you guys will have a certificate. You will take a course. It results from an educational program demonstrating your knowledge on course content. And that's often a gateway to a degree, where a third-party certification, and this is where a lot of people get confused on, third-party certification results from an assessment by an outside testing company, so not the course provider. It requires experience in order to qualify to sit for the exam. It's a standard-setting organization that indicates mastery, competency of an individual, and requires continuing education in order to maintain that certification. So, we're doing it again. There we go. Virtually every industry offers a level of high quality independent certification, except boarding and the pet services industry until now. So that's kind of where we come in. Why is PAC important to you, the pet parents? We virtually have no standard regulations. No education required. Anybody can open up a pet care business. So you're left to navigate, who you hire on your own. So we help you not being left to navigate that on your own. PAC certification allows you, the pet parents, to identify the most qualified, knowledgeable, and committed professionals for your family members. A certification that pet parents can trust. Why is PAC important to you, the pet professional in your business? Most professions require independent certification before you can even start your job to maintain your edge in an increasing competitive market, to stand out from the rest of them. Confidence in your employees, commitment to excellence, safety, and continued education, and building trust with your pet parents. And of course, the biggest one for us, especially in an industry where we have so much turnover, is recruiting high quality employees. So we ask you as a professional, do you know what you're doing when it comes to caring for other people's pets? You're taking profit for it. Are you good at what you do? Then we ask you to prove it. Our next exam date, for those that are interested, we just announced our recent certified professionals. So congratulations if we have any of you on the call today, or those that might be watching this later. Congratulations, that's a huge accomplishment. Our next test is November 4th to 18th. Your registration deadline is October 11th. Don't forget to join our Facebook study group if you're interested in that as well. And then visit us at paccert.org. We have a few links here, just to, I'll share them into the chat as well so you don't miss them. But yes, we would, if you're not part of the PAC yet, we would love you to be a part of the PAC, and we can't wait for that. And we're very excited. So we are here with Alyson. Let me just stop sharing my screen here. There we go. All right, thank you. So we're here with Alyson from Gingr, who is PAC's 2023 Diamond sponsor. And we simply couldn't be continuing to spread our message of third-party certification without your support. So thank you so very much for being here, and thank you for your support so that we can continue this mission. Alyson here is going to be presenting data-driven decision-making for pet care professionals. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Alyson, and let's get started. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to get my screen shared here and see if I can get presentation mode going. Maybe.
Oh, I was going to actually mention too, we do have a continuing education available to everybody as well. So please stay tuned for that. And also, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat box. We're going to be monitoring. We will take questions near the end, but we'll be monitoring them. So please have your questions out, because you're going to forget if you wait. So add them into the question or the chat box, and we will get to them. And this is recording. So yes, you will have access to this later. All right. Thanks, everyone. Sorry, Alyson, go ahead.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. Again, my name is Alyson. I have been working on the Gingr team almost a year now. I work with our Gingr users to optimize their app, make sure that the functionality that they have is up to snuff and as efficient as it can be. But what I kind of bring to the table for the Gingr team, and hopefully bring to you today in this presentation, is I also own 3 pet resorts myself. I was working a very high stress corporate job in the beginning of my career, traveling all over the world, doing lots of cool things. And the typical corporate burnout story, I found a pet resort, purchased it in 2017. We had 3 employees at that time. Today we have over 50 employees, and we've grown to 3 locations. So I joined Gingr kind of as a function of that. I started using Gingr software in my facility about 5.5 years ago or so. And really the software was kind of game changing for me, but I've always gone at my business from the standpoint of very data-driven decision making. I hate to be cheesy, but I make a lot of decisions based on data, because that's kind of how I came up in my career. So hopefully I can bring something to the table today as a facility owner, as an operator, that most of you probably are. So I just wanted to give a little background on me. And again, been with Gingr almost a year, and I kind of work with our customers optimizing their apps, and I'm drawing from that experience. Let's see if I can get my slides to move on here. Well, maybe.
I know if you click your mouse, I do the same thing every time, because when you're not sharing, it works perfectly. But when you're sharing, you have to use your little mouse, and then just click on your mouse.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you for that. So again, not to be cheesy, but I did put a quote in here that is one of my favorite quotes as it relates to business. So you cannot manage what you do not measure. So that's really the most important thing to think about as we go through the slides today. And that is just really, data is being used to manage and measure your business. And I personally, when I attend webinars like this, always just really want to get some meat and potatoes out of it. I don't like a lot of fluff. So I'm going to jump right into lots of examples using data that most of you should have in either your own Gingr software if you're a Gingr user, or your own software, or your own business if you're on pen and paper. Doesn't matter. I think some of these are really kind of top level important pieces of data. When I think about the data, I really want to be able to optimize that top and bottom line. I think none of us are here to not get paid. Most of us have a real passion for pets, I know, but at the end of the day, we want to be able to drive revenue, which ultimately will drive profit and what goes into your pocket. So we're going to look at both of those numbers and the middle part today to see what we can gain out of some of that data that we're looking at. Finding ways to solve your customers' problems. So that's sort of the classic business plan, is like, you want to open a business, if you have to find a problem that you're going to solve for your customers. We're going to take a look at how the data can tell us what other problems we can solve for them. And then make informed decisions on business operations. So that's the middle part, right? We can drive the revenue all day long, but managing the operations and making sure we're developing a good product is really important. And then, of course, licensing and safety requirements for pets in your care. One wrong move and you can, make a decision within your business that may risk the health and safety of the pets in your care or your own staff. And we'll take a look at how data can help us in those kinds of decision making and just keeping track of what's happening in your four walls. So we'll just dive into some examples. Optimization really just lends itself to that revenue driving and keep making sure that we're maximizing revenue. So I pulled a report here of weekly services happening in a pet facility. In this example, they have 122 grooming services being performed in a 1-week time frame. They operate a 6-day-a-week schedule, and they have 4 grooming stations. So from this data, I can see that they're only averaging like 5 or a little over 5 dogs per day per table. So from the standpoint of optimizing my revenue or maximizing my revenue, maybe I want to find a way to have an average of 7.25 dogs per table, right? So this really gives me the indication that maybe we're not booking as well as we could. Maybe we need to be reviewing scheduling procedures. Maybe we need to be training our front desk staff that several bath and brushes and a doodle would be better than 4 doodles because they can't take on any more capacity with that. So in this specific example, it's just telling me that we're not optimizing our revenue because we would want to be at 6, 7, 8 dogs per table, but we're only hitting 5. So great example of just using some really top level data there to understand how well we're filling our spots, right? And that's kind of an occupancy conversation as it relates to grooming. Same conversation here. So utilizing that same report of those 122 grooming appointments, only 18 took advantage, I'll kind of underline here, of the half day only available with grooming, right? So in this story, this facility offers a half day of daycare in the morning and grooming in the afternoon. I can tell based on this report really quickly that only 14, almost 15% of customers are taking advantage of a half day of daycare. So this might lead me to ask myself, how can we generate more revenue with these grooming clients? And how do we get these grooming clients to take advantage of our daycare? Maybe these grooming clients don't even know that daycare is available. And so we start to find ways to market to them by offering that half day. Of course, I know if you're in a facility that's offering half day of groom in the morning and grooming in the afternoon, or excuse me, half day of daycare in the morning and grooming in the afternoon, you may not be able to push every dog to the afternoon. So maybe we're not marketing it to everyone, but maybe you want to increase your daycare attendance. And so you strive for a 20% of your grooming clients booking that half day, but there's clearly some opportunity in this scenario for some additional revenue driving as well. Moving on, talking about analyzing spending habits. So in this first couple of examples, it's really just optimizing space and availability to drive revenue. I think it's so interesting to take a look at your customer spending habits. And in the beginning, when we talked about solving a problem for a customer, this is exactly what we're talking about here. So taking a look at sticky customers. So sticky customers, those are the ones that are coming back to you day after day, week over week, that you're seeing a lot. And understanding that really that 80-20 rule. So 80% of your revenue is being made by 20% of your customers. Those number 1 and number 2 go hand in hand with each other to say, okay, my sticky customers are probably the ones that are spending the most money with me. So how can I analyze that? And in my experience, figure out what kind of problems we can solve for that 20% of your customers. Because if you solve the problems for 20% of the customers, ultimately the peripheral will start coming in and you'll start building even more and better sticky customers.
Alyson, sorry, your very first slide, what report was that?
My very first slide, this one, it's a weekly report that comes to the emails of Gingr users. So it's weekly analytics is what the email is called.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure. this report, and I'll call out what reports that I'm using here since we've got some Gingr users on. So this one is our top spenders report. So customer spend report, and I just pulled top spenders over $500. This is a demo environment. So these aren't real users that you're seeing, but this is a demo situation. And I've got lots of data that I can pull just from taking a look at my top spenders. Number one, that source. So taking a look at where our customers are finding us, something that I think we do as busy owners and operators and our front desk staff, we're skipping over some of these extra fields, right? When we're booking those customers, we're like, I don't need to know where they found us. Let's just get them booked and get them in the facility. But looking back, to be able to have that data would tell us where, if we had advertising dollars, we could spend those dollars, because this is where the majority of our customers are coming. So in this example, our top, let's say 2 of 6 found us by Google reviews. I may want to put some advertising or some push behind my Google listing and drive your customers for positive reviews on your Google My Business listing, something along those lines. Knowing how they registered, also really interesting. So finding out if they registered using your customer portal or not. So with Gingr, we have a customer portal that really cuts a lot of administrative work out. I did a little research and see that around 2.5 to 4 hours is spent on capturing a really good sticky customer in the pet industry. And that is not just meeting with them for their training appointment. That is time on the phone, research they've done on the website. They're asking questions about pricing, going through all of their emergency contact information, those kinds of things. So when I see my top customers are not self-registering, I maybe can see that that's an opportunity to drive some of my customers to the customer portal that may be available, or maybe I need to beef up my online presence so a lot of these questions can be answered more easily. I am never, ever, ever a proponent of giving up the phone, because this is a relationship business, but it's interesting data to know that most of my top customers have talked to us on the phone versus booked online. And then also knowing how long those customers have been with us. So, again, I'll say sticky customers 100 times in a row, but those customers that are our top spenders, how many of them have been with us for a long time? Or what is the cycle that you're seeing with your top spenders? We all know there's sort of in a daycare environment, for example, there's sort of a life cycle of the dog, right? Like they can come 5 days a week if they want when they're young, and then the dog starts to age and those kinds of things. But also, what are the other factors? Do we have barriers to entry as far as booking? Are your hours not working for these people? So I find it really interesting to take a look at those top spenders and figure out how you're serving them, number one, and also figure out why you're losing them, or why are they dropping down in that top spending list. In that example, I drilled down. So I think Brianna with Gingr is number 3 on our list. So taking a look at her profile to see what services is she using. I can take a look in and take a look at her profile. I can take a look at reservations she's booked with us previously. And I see she's doing a lot of daycare, a lot of grooming. I don't see in these last, in these last several reservations, I don't see that she has done a lot of boarding with us. So start to ask myself, how could I serve her better, or how can I help her, and what additional problem can I solve? I'll use an example in my own facility. We would get lots of calls from folks asking if there was waste removal companies in our area. We're about 40 minutes. My main location is about 40 minutes from a major metropolitan airport and big city. And people would ask us for waste removal services. We kept saying, no, we don't know anybody. We don't know anybody. And finally I said, you know what? We can solve this problem. We scoop the poop with the best of them in our play yards, right? And we all do. And so we started taking waste removal clients, and I now have 2 people who are working full-time hours, 3 days a week, scooping poop in our area. And we have a reoccurring charge. These people get charged a certain price every Monday, and our scoopers show up and scoop their yards. It is 100% a straight line result of listening to what our customers are telling us. And that's really what you're doing with data when you're thinking about your customers' spend. What problem can you solve for them? This customer, same for example, who is she boarding with? I want to figure out who she's boarding with and why she's not using us. Maybe she doesn't travel and she's, thrown out as far as the examination goes, but taking a look at what your customers are telling you and what they're not telling you as well. As it relates to that example, taking a look again back on that weekly analytics email. This comes as an email to Gingr users. If you don't have it, you can change that setting in your user groups. But taking a look at things that are not selling and maybe it's not worth it, right? So when we initially did our waste removal, I purchased a vehicle and I said, is this even going to be worth it? So I gave myself 6 months and I'm analyzing, okay, is this the right thing? I paid for a vehicle, I'm paying staff to do this, and maybe I just need to cut that from my menu. Ultimately, I didn't and it worked. But in this example, we might take a look at a couple of them that are not selling well. So take a look at Blueberry Facial. We've only sold one of those. But take a look up here at Frozen Kong and Kong Room Service. I think this is probably the same service. So in that week, those people sold over 20 Frozen Kongs or Kong Room Service. That service is going well, right? Take a look. This is the same facility that I used in my first example. Take a look at this service, teeth brushing service. They only sold 6 of those in their grooming area. So of those 122 grooming appointments, they only sold 6. So is there an opportunity for you to take a look and say, okay, it's not even worth it for me to keep Blueberry Facial shampoo on my shelf, and you cut that expense out, but you are selling a few teeth brushing services. So how much gas can we put on the fire to have a better result in that service? Same with the Kong Room Service or the Frozen Kong. That's selling well, clearly. So what can you do to continue to market to the customers that are coming into your building? Hey, we have this option. I'm laughing here because it says ice cream treat 53. They sold 53 ice cream treats that week. Was it super hot and they advertised it? How did they sell that many services? And also, what are they making on it? So that's a slide that I didn't put in here, but take a look at, is this a high margin product? I'm assuming a Frozen Kong is pretty high margin, right? They're probably not sending those Frozen Kongs home. They're they're washing them and restuffing them and reusing them as an add-on service. I bet they're making good money on that. And those are some things that I would be taking a look at as it relates to maximizing revenue too. Here's a break for a cute dog picture. Jamie, do we have any questions in the chat we should talk about before we move on to the second section?
We do actually. We have a few.
Great.
So kind of they're all similar. So talking about those reports that you were discussing, they don't receive these reports. And somebody mentioned they go into the junk folder. Is there a way, somebody had mentioned just going to settings and whatnot. I could read that out if you'd like, but yeah, is there an easy way for people to obtain these reports?
Yes, definitely. They can send automatically through Gingr. When we get to the end of the presentation, my email will be there. Shoot me an email if you're not getting them, and I'll send you back step-by-step instructions to get them. Really, really helpful report. So happy to help get that. And if for some reason you have everything set up the way I send you the instructions, I'll get support to take a look at it for you.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we have another question. Is there a way to get a summary report of what services our top spenders use rather than digging into each profile?
There is a by services report. It's not going to be top spenders. It's just going to be services report across all of your audience, but there is a report that will pull all those top services.
Beautiful. That looks like all for now.
Okay.
Thank
We'll
you.
go on. I've got one more section we'll dig in here. So this again is the licensing portion. So in the previous portion, it's really all about maximizing dollars, maximizing profit, maximizing what you're offering for your customer and really listening to them through the data. And then this section, I really wanted to talk more about licensing, safety, and overall day-to-day operations. I think we get in the thick of things and we sort of stay in our lane. We don't think about, okay, are we operating in the most efficient way? And watching the data as far as that goes is really interesting. I put my quote here again. I'm going to say it for a third time, probably by the end. If you just jumped on, you cannot manage what you do not measure. So this is really how I make a lot of decisions in my own pet resort. And I would encourage you to kind of take a look at that as well. Operational data. I originally was going to put a report from every single one of these things in here, but I just think it's important because most people know that these are available specifically within Gingr. And if you're not a Gingr user, I hope and would encourage you to make sure the software you're on allows you to check these things. So dog to human ratio, of course, most municipalities are requiring some kind of ratio as it relates to social groups, definitely. Occupancy rates, that really lends itself both to maximization of revenue, but also to making sure that you don't have burnout in your employees. I think we could have a whole webinar talking about burnout with employees and making sure we have good balance there. Vaccination status. I will show a report relating to that. Altered status. Again, that we all know that the male dogs can create it. Both sexes can create issues, but those male dogs will get you every time. But altered status. So being able to see who's in your building and who's altered, who's not. Of course, feeding and medication. Again, most municipalities or most licensing agencies are requiring you to keep records relating to feeding and medication. For me, that's a big one, just making sure that you're really caring for the pets well and appropriately. And then cleaning and disinfecting and those kinds of things. We all know it's canine cold and flu season, and inevitably someone will come in and claim that you've dished out Bordetella to their dog, and just having the backup data and having a procedure in place that allows you to make sure you're doing the best you can with that is super important. Diving in a little bit more and drilling down actually is what this spreadsheet is about, or this slide is about. Knowing those basic ratio numbers. So I pulled a little shot of just your in and out and your overnights to avoid that staffing burnout, making sure you're not overbooking yourself. Those things are really important as it relates to data. Drill down data. So if you don't know Gingr, this is going to look really messy to you. If you do know Gingr, you're going to know that Hank has some issues going on. Hank has an aggression problem and he needs muzzled and various things. And I can tell that by the icons that are listed under Hank, but for me, always super important to drill down. So if this were a live environment, I would be able to click on this and see more information about why Hank has an aggression issue or why Hank might need to be muzzled. And for me, that drill down data and the communication piece between your front desk and your operating team and your kennel, those kinds of things are super important. I also want to mention, since it does seem like we have a lot of Gingr users, almost every report within Gingr is drillable. Especially relating to financial reports, feeding and medication reports, you can drill all the way down to that one single invoice that is dumping into your financial reporting. Same thing with feeding and medication. You can drill all the way down straight into that pet's profile. So if you don't know how that kind of works, I would definitely encourage you to take a look around in those the reporting options and see how far you can drill down to see that data. Here's some operational data that also connects to human behavior. So we were talking a little bit earlier about the Brianna example and what Brianna is booking with us and what she's not booking with us. This is the expired vaccinations report if you're a Gingr user. So you can actually go in and choose a date range. In my own facility, for example, on Mondays, we're checking for that following Monday and Sunday. So we're pulling up the time period of Monday to Sunday to say what dogs have reservations during that time period and whose vaccines are expired. Really interesting from an operations standpoint, of course, because in that 7-day period, if you have 50 dogs that don't have vaccinations, immediately I want to start asking myself, what's the barrier to entry, right? I think in most facilities, we're on the phone all day chasing down vaccines to be sure the customers can come in. So this would, number one, indicate that you want to make sure you have this handled from the licensing perspective, health and safety, those kinds of things, but also from the standpoint of, are you losing customers because they can't get vaccinations? We implemented vaccine clinics. Once a quarter, we get a vet to come in, and we do it during daycare. So the vet just does all the vaccinations, and we're adding a convenience factor for our customers. So taking a look at that data, going, okay, how can we shrink this list? We don't want to be calling every single week 15 different people asking for vaccination records. So this list to me is really interesting, and just seeing how you can offer your customers the service of maybe contacting their vet for you. If you don't know, within Gingr, you can build the vets in your area in, and you can send a records request straight from there. So if you go into the owner's files section, click on immunizations, click on that vet. There's a button right there that says send a records request, or send email, I think is what it says. And you can email your vets directly and develop those relationships with them. So you cut the middleman out, and your pet parents are having a convenience provided for them, and you don't have to pull your hair out because you don't have vaccines. And then operational data that may save lives. So this is really one that I wanted to mention, is in Gingr, and I don't see in my app audit meetings with a lot of clients, I don't see a lot of people using the checklist. Checklist really provides a lot of accountability. So you can build daily, weekly, hourly, annual checklists within Gingr, and your employees can utilize those to mark off, right? So medications, or cleaning the kennels, or in this case, this is a demo list, obviously, but just various things. And it allows you to provide accountability. So you can pull a report that says what's been done on the checklist, or what hasn't been done on the checklist, and who did it. Or, maybe in a daily walkthrough, you notice the kennels in one specific room weren't cleaned. You pull up your report, you say, oh, Sally said that she cleaned it, and then it becomes a training opportunity for you. And you really just create that accountability loop with your staff to be sure you're operating at a high capacity, and really, providing a safe environment for your pets. That really is all that I have as far as presentation goes. I'm hoping that you got some snippets out of what I talked about. I'm hoping some of those reports that I pulled up at least just got your brain moving of what can you manage, and maybe what you're measuring right now that you're not managing, what you're managing that you're not measuring, those kinds of things. And hopefully, again, you pulled a little snippet away from this presentation. Real quick, I'll mention, if you scan that QR code, anybody who's not on Gingr, we're offering 2 free months. If you're interested in getting on Gingr, you can scan that code and we can send you some information. If you're a current Gingr user and you'd like some help on those reports, feel free to shoot me a message. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. And if we need to get support or someone else looped in, I'm happy to do that for you as well. And thank you, Jamie, and thank you, PAC, for letting us give this presentation today. And I'm happy to take any other questions.
Awesome. Thank you. That was really good. Very informative. Lots of things that go on behind the scenes that I didn't even know about. And we do have a few questions.
Right.
This one here is kind of more of a comment. As far as I know, there's no way to pull a report for unaltered pets. There's no report for system icons unless they're incorrect. Is there a way to do that?
So you can indicate within Gingr that you want an icon to automatically populate if the pet is unaltered, and then you can pull an icon report within Gingr. Yep.
Oh, perfect.
Go to your report section and type icons, and there'll be a report that pulls up there.
Oh, beautiful. If we have multiple locations, what's the best way to pull the list of most used vets per location? Good question.
You stumped me on that one. I don't have a great answer for that. I think you would have to be building. I think you would have to build them in system wide. Shoot me an email and let me investigate that a little for you if you want.
Okay. And then your email's on the screen right now.
Yep.
I'm just kind of looking to see if this is a response to somebody else, or. So somebody said they were able to create.
Questions, feel free to pop in if you've got a live question too.
Absolutely. They've been able to create a custom icon to flag unaltered animals. Oh, okay, so they're just responding to that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Somebody says, thank you. We're a Gingr user, though I will be contacting someone there to help me make a closer look at what, just to set up their accounts. Awesome. And
Great.
Gingr will be very happy to help you with that. Is there a copy going to be able, oh yes, this is a recording. So you will have access to that in a few days. What about occupancy rates?
What specifically relating to,
It-
did they just say
I'm not,
occupancy rates?
maybe just reports on occupancy
Yeah.
rates.
Yeah. There's several occupancy options, occupancy as it relates to lodging, occupancy as it relates to other services like daycare and those kinds of things. So if you go into your report section on the bottom right, it's going to be under the reservation section. And I always just encourage you, look at every report that's in there and see what applies to you. But there are occupancy, it's going to tell you had 356 nights available and you only filled 170 of those. The report will pull to show you, you had 10 kennels and 9 of them were full and those kinds of things. But that report is available. It's on the bottom right side of the report section.
Awesome. Yeah. And I imagine there's so many things that can be done in a data system that we probably I know I have an iPhone and I know there's so many things that I could probably do with that thing. And I have no idea even where to get started with that. So yeah. Lots of questions on those actual systems. Is there a way to get data on seasonal impacts?
So seasonal impacts, it's a good question. So you can do peak rate pricing and you can pull a report on that peak rate pricing. What I use for seasonal is really the revenue by dates comparison. So I might pull July of 23 and July of 22 to compare where I was rate wise, but you can also pull those. Sometimes I'll pull the occupancy, same situation. I'll pull occupancy for July versus now versus last July. And most every report can be exported to Excel. So you can kind of pull that over and manipulate that data how you want. And the peak rate pricing, I think, is something that a lot of Gingr users don't use. So, for example, 4th of July, since that's fresh in our minds, you could increase your pricing by $2, $3, $4 for that particular window of, period of the window. And maybe you start looking at every weekend, your occupancy level, maybe your wait list. Are you having huge wait lists? Are you at full occupancy on those weekends? If I'm at full occupancy on a holiday weekend, my price is probably going to go up because people want that reservation type or that reservation date period. And most likely those holiday weekends, you're paying your staff more. And you're sacrificing your own time and those kinds of things. So there might be an opportunity for some premium pricing there. And Gingr has the ability to just, you can go in and decide what those weekends are. Martin Luther King weekend is a huge weekend for us. We charge $5 additional per day for that weekend because people are beating down the door to get in. One lady asked me if she could just put her dog's kennel in our lobby. And then I'm like, that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. But those are the kinds of things that I'm going, okay, we're at full capacity. We're maximizing every space inch we have. Maybe we have an opportunity to make a little bit more here. And not that we want to gouge our customers, but understanding what service we're providing.
Absolutely. Can you auto create an icon based on a client's address?
No.
Okay. Best report for revenue per dog per day.
Revenue per dog per day. I would probably use the sales receipt report. That's going to break down by category. So I would just literally take you could see by category how much you made in daycare, grooming, boarding, training, all those categories if you have it set up. And that's something I see a lot of folks don't have their account, like their revenue account set up correctly in Gingr. But I would take my total divided by how many dogs checked in for the day, and you could get an average dollar amount per day.
Beautiful. Do you have any further recommendations on where to find some ideas about additional measurements or KPIs that they should be measuring?
Oh man, I could talk all day on that.
That could be a whole new topic discussion, right?
Yeah. I just think for me, and I mean this completely genuinely, this is really how I got my job working with Gingr. I brought it into our facility. We were on a different software previous. And before that, the previous owner was on pen and paper. I implemented Gingr and I started saying, what data are they giving me and how can I use it? And so for the person that's asking those questions, if you don't know the reporting section inside and out, upside and down, that right there is going to give you so many indicators. And hopefully most of you are in a growth phase or, growing and increasing what you're doing. So pull your report from a year ago to today and tell yourself, okay, this is a decrease. What are we doing wrong? And truly what I'm saying, really with this whole webinar is take that data from last year to this year and figure out, did the number increase or did the number land where you wanted it to land? And if it didn't, set that KPI, set that goal and figure out in there, how do we work towards that, right? That I think that the half day example that I used there, that customer and that facility is going, ooh, we could sell so many more half days. Our grooming clients probably don't even know it's an option, right? Maybe it's not on their menu or they're not talking about it. And so I really think genuinely, if you're not looking at the reports that are available to you, do that to start with, and then do some industry research. The labor rate is really an interesting conversation as it relates to just grooming, to just training, to just daycare, to boarding. The labor rates, I think, are a big one that there's not a direct report within Gingr for that, but you can get that report and sort of build to say, okay, I want my grooming labor rate to be 55%. You're doing a 50% split with your groomers and 5% for additional, fees or whatever, and then start finding that. Pull your sales receipt report up and say, we made $100,000 this month. We paid out $52,000 in salaries. Okay, your labor rate is only 52%. Great. You're doing really well. You knocked that KPI out of the park. So I would start by knowing the reporting section of your Gingr or any software. If you're not on Gingr, I would start by knowing that inside and out and figuring out what's important to you as a business owner.
Excellent. Yeah. And I imagine, you've said it before, that if you guys have any questions on those reports and how to gain them, send Alyson a message and she will helpfully guide you through that. We've got one more question here. Two actually. Is there a way to search customers that book every year for the same holiday?
You could, this is a really good example to say, I think that with Gingr users, we every year Gingr sees a list of reports that people want to see. And I think sometimes that you can find that data like with a little bit of legwork, right? So in that specific example, I would be pulling occupancy based on whatever holiday you're thinking about. I would be exporting it to Excel, and then I'd be exporting the same holiday the previous year, and I'd ask Excel to tell me if the two numbers match. So then you can see your 15 customers that booked last year over this year. It takes a little legwork, right? But the data is there if you can export it to Excel and kind of manipulate it.
Excellent. I've got two more questions. But before we get those to those two, I just wanted to give out the Certified Professional CEU code. And that CEU code for any professionals on right now, hopefully you got your mobile app open and you're ready to input CC230048. CC230048. And I'll put it in the chat as well. Two last questions. We were getting a bunch of thank yous in here as well. Is a report to show how much revenue by zip code? Kind of a similar question to before.
Yeah, these are interesting. I'm actually going to scratch this down because I give a lot of feedback to development. So
maybe that's something people want. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know off the top of my head if that's on the list sorry, I can't talk and write at the same time. I don't know if that's on the list for development now, but it's interesting to know. There is not currently that you can pull by zip code that I can think of off the top of my head. I don't believe so, but I'm gonna give that feedback to development for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, we've had a few of those that are kind of similar. So yeah, maybe that might be something in the future. And then we've got not a Gingr user yet, but this was super helpful. So thank you for joining us today. For our pet parents, that we might have some pet parents on this call, what are some pet parent perks for their daycare to have a software system versus a pen and paper? Maybe this is a conversation that they might have as a customer to approach their daycare professional and say, hey, have you ever thought of this just to make our lives, all of our lives easier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one off the top of my head is the pet parent portal. There's several softwares that have some kind of potential interface. Of course, I think Ginger's is the best, but from being able to book at 11 p.m. at night, it's so interesting to me. I wake up in the morning and there's a list of 15 or 20 reservation requests in our locations. And it's because at 11 o'clock at night, the pet parent is realizing the pet might need some training, or we booked a trip to Maui, or those kinds of things. So integration as far as being able to send those requests in versus having to call really big convenience factor for a pet parent. I of course love the communication options with softwares. So Gingr can communicate by email, by text message. The report card system to me is a game changer. When I demo the software for non-Gingr users, I always, that's kind of the first thing that I talk about, because as we know, the pet industry is turning more into the hospitality industry than ever before. And those report cards allow you to attach pictures and videos and type, customize things and send to the pet parent. So I think that would be it. And then of course, the record keeping and the safety and regulations. For me as a pet parent, I want to know that my pet resort or my pet facility has their ducks in a row. Immunizations and those things, of course, super important.
Yeah, and how easy just to upload that and do that and just have it all ready, right? And I relate to the midnight. I'm on Amazon often
Oh
at
yeah.
midnight. Oh yeah, I need one of those. Oh yeah, look at that. I don't know what I'm doing at midnight on Amazon, but I just can't sleep. So I'm like, oh, let's go shopping.
I have 4 kids, so I only do things at like 2 in the morning.
I love it. I love it. Amy asks, if you're giving feedback, can you ask them for a vet report by location, please?
I'm writing that down right now.
Yay. Thank you so much. Is there any, we'll wait a minute or two, see if there's any other questions coming in, but thank you everyone for coming in. Just to remind everybody that CEU code is CC230048. For users that have not looked into this yet, check out feature feedback located under the question mark icon at the very top of your dashboard. Is that a Gingr? That's a Gingr thing. Thank you, Jocelyn, for that. Awesome. Any other questions from anybody? This was fantastic. This was a great presentation. It really spruced up a lot of questions that, we may not have otherwise had the ability to ask or think about or even realize the importance of. And hopefully this gives you some data vision of how to kind of better build your business moving forward and get some data to help with better sales. Thank you, Alyson, for your time today. Absolutely fabulous. Thanks again for your PAC support. We truly we just love that. So thank you. Everyone have a great day. It's just the beginning of our work week. So hopefully you're busy with all your summer guests, and have a wonderful week. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.